The woman had no past, and Shard could taste every future she would never have. The smuggler's dock reeked of leaking coolant and species Shard didn't recognize. Shard's crystalline sensory nodes flickered through probability streams the way other beings breathe. Automatic, constant, unavoidable. Every merchant, every guard, every drunk leaning against a pylon carried futures Shard could read like weather patterns. This one would drink themselves into liver failure in 4 cycles. That one would die in a cargo accident. The Hevish pilot arguing with the dockmaster would retire wealthy to a moon colony and outlive his children. The woman loading cargo into Bay 47 had nothing. Not future death. Not future prosperity. Just silence. A probability void where a pattern should be. Shard's lower nodes went dark in what the Velkesh medical literature called shock response. The upper nodes kept processing. Had to keep processing. The woman moved with efficiency that suggested military training, but her flight suit bore no insignia. Her ship's manifest, Shard had already accessed it through the station's public registry, listed her as equipment. Crew count, 0. Cargo, standard. Weapons system, active. Under pilot designation, the field read, Wraith. Not a name. A call sign. A designation for something that shouldn't exist. Shard approached anyway. The job broker had been explicit. Transport off station within the hour, no questions, double rate for immediate departure. Shard's home pattern had transmitted the distress beacon. The family crystal was fragmenting. Shard needed transport to the Velkesh Medical Nexus 3 systems out, and this human with no past was the only pilot desperate or stupid enough to run an unlicensed jump. I need passage. Shard's translator rendered the statement in standard, though Shard's actual communication involved harmonic resonance through the nodes that other species couldn't perceive. The technology bridged the gap, made conversation possible with beings who couldn't taste the future. The woman didn't stop working. She secured a crate with practiced motions, checked the maglock twice, then turned. Her face was human standard, bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes, skin in the brown range that suggested Earth origin genetics. Shard noted the details because there was nothing else to note. No identification tattoos. No clan markings. No scars that told stories. How much mass? The woman's voice was flat. Not hostile. Just empty. 63 kilograms. No cargo. Can you handle heartburn? I don't have grav compensators rated for crystalline matrices. Shard species could handle heartburn better than most. The Velkesh had evolved in high-gravity environments where atmospheric density shifted without warning. Acceptable. 10,000 credits. Half now. It was triple the going rate. Shard transferred 5,000 without negotiating. The family crystal was fragmenting. Every probability Shard ran ended with Shard arriving too late or not arriving at all. This woman with no pattern was still the best odds. The woman checked her account. Not at once. Bay 47. Departure in 15 minutes. Don't be late. I need to know your designation. You already do. It's on the manifest. Wraith is not a designation. It's a Shard search for the translation. An absence marker. Yeah. The woman turned back to her cargo. It is. The proximity alert screamed before Shard could ask what that meant. The station's defensive perimeter had just registered 4 ships dropping out of jump space at coordinates that violated every safety protocol. Military-grade vessels. Predator-class hulls. They weren't broadcasting identification, which meant they weren't here legally. The woman, Wraith, moved. Not human fast. Faster. She had the cargo bay sealed, and the ship's engines spooling before the second proximity alarm finished its first cycle. Get in. Now. Shard moved. The Velkesh didn't run. Their crystalline structure made rapid movement energetically expensive, but Shard managed something close. The ship's airlock was already cycling. Wraith was in the cockpit, hands moving across controls Shard couldn't track. Strap in or don't. We're burning in 30 seconds. Shard found a seat. The harness wasn't designed for Velkesh anatomy, but Shard made it work. Through the viewport, the station's defensive batteries were powering up. The attacking ships were spreading into combat formation. They weren't here for the station. They were here for someone on it. Shard's probability nodes flared. Ran the pattern. For military vessels, coordinated assault, illegal entry, target designation unknown. They're here for you. Shard's translator couldn't render the harmonic undertone of certainty, but the words were enough. Wraith didn't answer. Her hands kept moving. The ship detached from the dock with a magnetic clunk that Shard felt through the hull. The engines fired. Not a standard burn. A combat burn that pressed Shard back into the seat with force that would have killed a human without augmentation. Wraith sat forward in her chair like the acceleration was a mild inconvenience. The station came apart behind them. Not completely. Not catastrophically. Just surgically. One of the attacking ships fired a precision strike that took out Bay 51, exactly 4 berths from where they'd been docked. The explosion blossomed in vacuum silence. Debris spreading in patterns Shard's nodes automatically calculated. Trajectory, velocity, probable impact points. They're not shooting to kill. Wraith's voice was steady. Clinical. They're hurting. Hurting what? Me. The second ship fired. The blast tore through the station's upper ring, exactly where their current trajectory would have taken them if Wraith hadn't adjusted course 3 seconds earlier. Shard's nodes hadn't even finished calculating the probability before Wraith had already moved. How did you? Strafe pattern Delta 7. Old Hegemony tactical manual. They're using doctrine from the Rim Wars. Wraith's hands moved again. The ship rolled, dropped, accelerated at an angle that made Shard's sensory nodes flicker. Which means they know who trained me. Who are you? Operational. Hold on. The station's defensive batteries opened fire. Not at the attacking ships. At them. Shard's probability nodes went white with panic calculations. The station defenses had been compromised. Someone had overridden the identification protocols. Marked them as hostile. Every gun emplacement on the ring was tracking their ship, and Wraith was flying them straight into the firing solution. You're flying toward, I know. 3 batteries fired simultaneously. Wraith dropped the ship into a spin that put the ventral hull toward the incoming fire, burned retrograde for 2 seconds, then punched the main engines at an angle that should have torn the ship apart. They passed through the firing solution exactly as the bolts crossed the space where they would have been. Wraith had threaded them through the gap with centimeters to spare. Shard's probability sense couldn't track her, couldn't predict her. Wraith moved through future space like she didn't exist, like she was exempt from causality, like she was a ghost. The attacking ships were falling behind. The station was a shrinking point of light and destruction. Wraith's hands were steady on the controls. She was calculating jump coordinates, setting the navigation computer to a destination Shard couldn't read. Bay 47, Wraith said. Final approach. Automated defenses targeting. Shard's translator didn't process that for 2 full seconds. What? The station fired on us. That means our departure vector is logged. They'll analyze it, calculate our jump point, and have ships waiting when we drop back into real space. Wraith's fingers moved across the tactical display. So we're not jumping to where they think we're jumping. Where are we jumping? Nowhere. For 3 days. Wraith entered the final coordinates. The jump drive spooled with a sound Shard felt in the nodes that tasted time. Find a bunk. Ration bars in the galley. Water's recycled, but clean. Don't touch anything in the cargo bay. You haven't told me. The woman turned. For the first time, she looked at Shard directly. Her eyes were gray. Not the gray of storm clouds or ash. Just absence of color. Like someone had forgotten to finish painting them. Get to the ship, she said. That's an order, Shard. Shard's designation was Shard of Infinite Trajectories. 17 syllables in the Velkesh harmonic language. For words in standard. Nobody shortened it. The Velkesh didn't do nicknames. Identity was sacred. Pattern was everything. This human stranger had just called Shard by a name they'd never used. The jump drive engaged. Reality folded. The universe became somewhere else. Shard looked at the console beside their seat. The crew manifest was still displayed. The field that should have listed the pilot's name read, Crew, 0 cargo, Standard Weapons System, active. The woman was listed as equipment. Not crew. Not human. Not a person with a designation. Just a weapons system that happened to be active. Shard's probability nodes tried to calculate what that meant. Tried to find the pattern. The origin. The reason a being would erase themselves so completely that even official records treated them as machinery. The calculations kept returning null. The woman, Wraith, had no past. And, somehow, she kept flying anyway. Wraith flew the ship like she was punishing it for existing. 3 days into void transit, Shard had cataloged every detail of her routine. Not because Shard wanted to. Because watching Wraith was like watching a probability equation that refused to resolve. The pattern should exist. Patterns always existed. The Velkesh had built their entire civilization on the fundamental law that all beings generated predictable future streams from the accumulated weight of their past. Wraith had no weight. She moved through the ship in 90-minute cycles. Cockpit check. Engine monitoring. Galley. Bunk. Repeat. No variation. No personal touches. The bunk in her quarters. Shard had looked, because the door didn't lock, and privacy wasn't a concept Wraith seemed to care about. Was regulation tight. The blanket was folded with military precision. No pictures. No personal items. No evidence anyone lived there. The galley was worse. Shard watched from the corridor. The Velkesh didn't sleep, didn't need the privacy of darkness to rest, as Wraith consumed a ration bar. She didn't taste it. Shard could tell. She chewed mechanically, 20 times per bite, like she'd counted it out, and decided that was sufficient. Drank exactly 400 milliliters of water. Disposed of the wrapper. Moved to the next task. Do you taste food? Shard asked. Wraith paused. Her hand was halfway to the next ration bar. It has calories. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you're getting. She took the bar. Moved past Shard toward the cockpit. Your family crystal. You said it was fragmenting. What does that mean? Shard's upper nodes flickered. The Velkesh communicated distress through harmonic dissonance, but the translator couldn't render it. It means the pattern is collapsing. The probability lines are converging toward dissolution. Your family is dying. The crystal structure that contains our collective pattern is destabilizing. Yes. Wraith settled into the pilot's chair. Checked systems that hadn't changed in 3 days. How long? I don't know. The admission made Shard's nodes go dark. I can't see past the fragmentation event. Too many variables. Too much chaos. Chaos. Wraith's voice had something in it Shard couldn't identify. Not emotion. Just recognition. Yeah, that happens. Your species experiences it differently. We experience everything differently. Wraith's hands moved across the navigation display. 12 hours to the outer beacon. Then, we jump to the Nexus approach vector. You'll have time. To arrive before the fragmentation? To arrive. What happens after that? Wraith didn't finish. She pulled up the ship's log, scanned it, then wiped it clean. All of it. Flight recorder. Navigation history. Communications archive. Everything. Gone. Shard's nodes flared in alarm. You're deleting the ship's memory. Every 24 hours. Wraith confirmed. Operational security. Operational security against what? Everything. Wraith closed the log interface. Open the fuel management system. I don't keep history. History is how they find you. Who finds you? Everyone. The word sat in the cockpit like a decompression alarm. Shard's probability nodes ran the pattern. Tried to calculate who everyone meant. Military? Criminal syndicates? Hegemony Black Ops? The attacking ships had used RIM war tactics, which suggested you were hegemony military. Not a question. Shard's nodes tasted certainty even without data. Wraith's hand stopped moving. For exactly 3 seconds. Then, they resumed. I was operational. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. Wraith stood. Moved toward the corridor. Get some rest. We're burning hard when we hit the beacon. The Velkesh don't rest. Then meditate. Calculate. Whatever it is you do when you're not asking questions I won't answer. Shard didn't move. You can't erase yourself completely. Even without records, you exist. You have a pattern. Biology. Memories. Choices you've made that led you here. Wraith stopped in the corridor. Her back to Shard. The flight suit had repair patches on the shoulders. Shard counted them. 14. 15. The 16th was newer, the material slightly different. Shard cataloged each one instead of looking at the back of Wraith's head. Memories aren't patterns, Wraith said. They're ghosts. And ghosts can't hurt anyone. She walked away. Shard stood in the empty cockpit and tried to understand what that meant. The Velkesh relationship with time was different from other species. Shard didn't just remember the past. The past existed as crystallized pattern in Shard's nodes, accessible, immutable, defining. The future existed as probability streams, fluid but traceable. A Velkesh lived in all 3 tenses simultaneously. Past pattern, present moment, future possibility. Wraith existed in present tense only. No past pattern Shard could taste. No future streams that extended beyond violence and short outcomes. Just now. This moment. The next action. The next breath. It should have driven her mad. The human brain. Shard had studied xenobiology, knew the basics, required narrative continuity. Identity. Self-conception built on accumulated experience. Humans told themselves stories about who they were, and those stories shaped how they moved through the world. Wraith had no story, or she'd killed it. Shard returned to the passenger compartment. Tried to rest. Failed. The Velkesh meditative state required accessing past pattern to stabilize present moment. But Shard kept reaching for Wraith's pattern and finding nothing. Like probing a wound that wouldn't close. 36 hours later, proximity alert. Shard was in the corridor when the alarm sounded. Wraith was already in the cockpit, already reading the sensor display, already adjusting course before Shard finished processing that something was wrong. 3 ships on intercept. Military configuration. Matching their vector with precision that suggested they'd been waiting. They found us. Wraith's voice was flat. Again. How? You wiped the logs. The jump coordinates were encrypted. Doesn't matter how. Wraith's hands moved. They always find me. The comm system crackled. Opened without Wraith touching it. Hegemony vessel. This is Pursuit Unit Kestrel 7. You are ordered to cut engines and prepare to be boarded. Respond immediately. Wraith didn't respond. Her jaw was tight. Shard's nodes registered the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers had stopped moving for half a second. Hegemony vessel, respond. We are authorized to use force. Cut your engines. Wraith reached for the comm. Shard thought she was going to answer. Instead, she shut it down completely. Killed the receiver. They were running silent now. The pursuing ship adjusted course. Closed the distance. Lieutenant Kira Voss. The transmission came through on emergency frequencies, impossible to block. We know you're receiving this. We know you can hear us. Surrender now, and we can negotiate terms. Wraith flinched. Not physically. Shard wouldn't have seen it if they weren't watching her so carefully. But something in her posture shifted. Something in the way she held herself went rigid. Shard's translator rendered the name. Lieutenant Kira Voss. Military designation. Rank. Identity. That's you. Shard's nodes were screaming probability warnings. They're calling your name. No. Wraith's voice was ice. They're calling a dead woman's name. Lieutenant Voss, you have 30 seconds to respond, or we will fire on your vessel. We don't want to kill you. We want to bring you home. Wraith armed weapons. Her ship had defensive systems, point defense lasers, countermeasure pods, one torpedo tube that probably shouldn't have been legal on a civilian vessel. She brought all of it online. 20 seconds, Lieutenant. Your family is still looking for you. Your mother. Wraith killed the emergency receiver, ripped the control panel open, and physically disconnected the circuit. Sparks cascaded across her hands. She didn't flinch. They know who you are, Shard said. The words came out as harmonic panic. The translator rendered it flat. They know who I killed. Wraith powered the engines to maximum. Hold on. The first ship fired. Wraith rolled the ship, dropped altitude. In void space, altitude was arbitrary, but the maneuver changed their vector relative to the attacking formation and burned retrograde. The shot passed overhead. Would have disabled the engines if she'd kept her original course. The second ship fired. Wraith didn't try to dodge. She took the hit on the port deflector shield, let it collapse, then used the energy bleed to mask her signature while she redirected power to the main drive. You're taking damage, Shard said. I'm taking specific damage. Wraith adjusted course by 2 degrees. They're hurting me toward the third ship. It's a capture formation. They don't want me dead. Then, what do they want? They want Lieutenant Kira Voss to come home. Wraith's hands were steady, and they're going to keep trying until they understand she can't. The third ship moved to intercept. Wraith saw it coming. Adjusted. The ship fired. Not a kill shot. A disabling pulse meant to scramble their navigation systems. Wraith cut main power 1 second before impact. The pulse passed through empty space where their engine signature had been. Wraith drifted, silent, running on battery reserves. The attacking ships adjusted formation, scanning for the disabled vessel they expected to find. Wraith waited. Shard's nodes were calculating the odds. 3 military vessels. 1 civilian ship with damaged shields. No viable escape vector. Probability of survival, diminishing. Wraith fired maneuvering thrusters. Not to escape. To change facing. The ship rotated 90 degrees, bringing the torpedo tube to bear on the closest pursuit ship. You can't win this fight, Shard said. I'm not trying to win. Wraith armed the torpedo. I'm trying to make them understand. She fired. The torpedo wasn't military grade. It was a mining charge, the kind used to break up asteroids. It wouldn't penetrate military shielding. Wouldn't damage the hull. Would just detonate in a brilliant electromagnetic pulse that lit up the void like a star going nova. The pursuing ship's sensors went white. Blind. Wraith punched the engines. Full burn. Away from the formation, away from the pursuit vector, toward a jump point that shouldn't have been viable this close to a gravity well. The drive can't handle, Shard started. It'll handle it, or it won't. Wraith entered coordinates. Either way, they lose the trail. Where are we jumping? Wraith didn't answer. The jump drive was screaming. The ship was coming apart at the seams. Shard's probability nodes tasted catastrophic failure in every timeline. Wraith engaged the drive anyway. Reality folded. They jumped. The ship held together. Barely. When they dropped back into real space, Shard's nodes were offline. Overloaded. The Velkesh sensory system wasn't designed to process jump transitions that violated standard safety parameters. It took Shard 4 minutes to reboot. To see where they were. Empty space. No stars. No beacons. No navigation reference points. Where? Shard's translator stuttered. Where are we? Wraith was running damage diagnostics. The ship was bleeding power. Life support was at 60%. The jump drive was offline, possibly permanently. Void dark, Wraith said. The space between charted systems. No navigation markers. No automated traffic. Nothing for them to track. You jumped us into the void. Better than letting them take me. Take you where? Wraith finally looked at Shard. Her eyes were gray. Flat. Home, she said. They want to take me home. Back to being Lieutenant Kira Voss. Back to the life I had before I killed her. You keep saying that. Shard's nodes were flickering, trying to process. You killed her. But you're her. You are Kira Voss. No. Wraith turned back to the console. I'm what's left after she died. And they need to accept the funeral. The ship drifted in void dark. No pursuit. No signals. Just silence and the fading hum of failing systems. Shard stood in the cockpit and tried to taste Wraith's future. Found only violence. Only short timelines. Only endings. If you won't go back, Shard said, where are you going? Wraith didn't answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was empty. Nowhere, she said. That's the point. The hunters broadcast her name, and Wraith flinched like she'd been shot. Shard had been monitoring the NAV computer, trying to plot a course out of void dark, when the transmission cut through the silence. No warning. No hail. Just her name, spoken like an accusation. Lieutenant Kira Voss. We know you're here. We've been tracking the ion trail from your failed jump drive. You have nowhere left to run. Wraith's hand was on the comm kill switch. But she didn't press it. Shard's nodes flickered in confusion. She'd killed the comm before. Ripped circuits out rather than listen. Now she was listening. Lieutenant, this is Commander Okafor. I know you remember me. 3rd Fleet, Proxima campaign. You saved my life at Kepler Station. The voice was human, male, tired. I'm not here to hurt you. None of us are. We just want to bring you home. Wraith's jaw was tight enough that Shard could see the muscle tension from across the cockpit. We have your file, Kira. We know what happened. We know about the breach, the intelligence leak, the targets who died because someone in your unit was compromised. We know you think you led them there. Shard's probability nodes were screaming. This was new data. Pattern emerging from void. The shape of what Wraith had been. You weren't responsible. The tribunal cleared you. Full exoneration. It's been 4 years, Lieutenant. Your mother is still waiting. Your sister asks about you every month. They deserve to know you're alive. Wraith hit the kill switch. The transmission died mid-sentence. She sat in the pilot's chair, hands flat on the console, breathing in measured counts. Shard recognized the pattern. Centering technique. The kind soldiers use to manage combat stress. They cleared you, Shard said. You didn't. I led a kill squad to my own safe house. Wraith's voice was clinical. Detached. I didn't know I was compromised. Didn't know they'd cracked my personal comm. I thought I was protecting my team. Instead, I gave the enemy my family's location. My sister's school. My mother's address. Shard's nodes flickered. The targets who died would have been everyone I loved. Wraith stood, moved to the sensor display. 3 ships, still closing. Slow. Careful. So I died first. Volunteered for a suicide run on Dust Station. Rigged my own life pod to fail. Made sure the casualty report was ironclad. Lieutenant Kira Voss, killed in action, posthumous commendation, end of pattern. But you survived. I survived. Wraith's hands were moving again. Checking systems. Calculating. And then I made sure she didn't. Erased every record. Deleted every connection. Became something the enemy couldn't track because there was nothing left to track. Your family is safe. Because Kira Voss is dead. Wraith pulled up the ship's power grid. They were running on reserves. If I go back, if I let them prove I'm alive, the pattern reestablishes. The connections rebuild. Everyone I loved becomes a target again. The sensor alert chimed. The pursuing ships were spreading into capture formation. Standard tactical doctrine. Box the target, close from 3 vectors, eliminate escape routes. Wraith knew the doctrine. Shard could see it in the way she analyzed the formation. The way her eyes tracked their movements with the precision of someone who'd run this exact scenario 100 times. From the other side. You were the one hunting, Shard said. Before. You were the kill squad commander. Yeah. Wraith armed what was left of their weapons. 1 torpedo. Point defense lasers that would barely scratch military shielding. I was good at it too. The second ship transmitted. Different voice. Female. Younger. Big sister. The words were soft. Painful. I know you can hear me. I don't care what name you're using now. I don't care what you think you did. Mom is sick. The doctors say 6 months. Maybe less. She wants to see you. Wraith's hand moved to the kill switch. Stopped halfway. Please, Kira. I know you're trying to protect us. I know that's what this is. But you can't protect us from grief. You can't protect us from needing you. Wraith hit the switch. The cockpit went silent except for the background hum of failing systems. Shard's probability nodes were processing patterns Shard didn't want to see. The futures where Wraith surrendered. Where she went home. Where she allowed herself to be Lieutenant Kira Voss again. They all ended in blood. Not immediately, but within the year. The enemy, whoever they were, would find the pattern. Would follow the connection. Would strike. The futures where Wraith stayed dead were quieter. Smaller. Her family grieved. Her sister grew old without her. Her mother died without closure. But they survived. You made yourself a ghost, Shard said. To keep them alive. I made myself nothing. Wraith checked the sensor display. The ships were 5 minutes from firing range. Because nothing can't be used against the people you love. That's not. Shard searched for the translation. That's not rational. By any species measure. You're preserving their physical existence, but destroying their emotional well-being. The cost-benefit analysis. I know the math. Wraith's voice was flat. I've run it 1,000 times. The answer is always the same. They're alive. That's all that matters. Even if they hate you for it. They can't hate me. Lieutenant Kira Voss is dead. They're grieving a casualty of war. Wraith powered up the engines. That's survivable. Being killed because I was selfish enough to go home isn't. The third ship transmitted. Commander Okafor again. Lieutenant, we're in firing position. I don't want to use force. But I have my orders. Surrender now, or we will disable your ship. Wraith didn't kill the comm this time. She looked at Shard. They won't shoot you, she said. You're a civilian. Not part of this. When they board, tell them I forced you into transport. Tell them, I'm not leaving. Shard's translator rendered the harmonic resonance as flat certainty. I engaged your services. You're getting me to the Nexus. I'm getting you killed. Then, my probability nodes are wrong. Shard moved to the NAV station. And, they're never wrong. Wraith stared at Shard for 3 full seconds. Then, something in her expression shifted. Not a smile. Not warmth. Just recognition. The kind soldiers gave each other before a fight they wouldn't win. Okay, she said. Then, hold on. She cut the engines. Let the ship drift. The pursuing ships closed in, weapons hot, boarding vectors locked. Lieutenant Voss, final warning. Wraith fired the maneuvering thrusters. Not to evade. To rotate the ship 180 degrees, bringing the cargo bay toward the lead pursuit vessel. Then, she opened the cargo bay doors. Every crate she'd loaded on the smuggler's dock came loose at once. Not cargo. Debris. Scrap metal. Asteroid fragments. The kind of garbage a mining ship would haul to refineries. Except she'd packed it with precision, calculated mass and trajectory, released it in a spread pattern that turned the void between them into a kinetic minefield. The pursuing ships scattered. Standard evasive. Exactly what Wraith had counted on. While they dodged, Wraith fired the last torpedo. Not at the ships. At the largest piece of debris. A chunk of iron nickel or she'd positioned for exactly this purpose. The mining charge detonated. They fragmented into thousands of high-velocity shards, each one traveling at terminal velocity in the direction Wraith had calculated when she loaded the bay 3 days ago. The pursuing ships were military-grade, armored, shielded, but shields were designed to stop coherent energy weapons and guided missiles, not kinetic swarms traveling in unpredictable vectors. One ship took damage, non-critical, enough to force them to fall back and reassess. Wraith burned hard, away from the debris field, away from the pursuit formation, toward a NAV point shards nodes couldn't identify. Where are we going? Dust Station. Wraith's hands were steady. Where Kira Voss died. If they want her, they can find her there. The pursuing ships regrouped. Gave chase. Shard watched the sensor display and tried to calculate odds. Found none that ended well. Why won't you let them say your name? Shard asked. Wraith took a hit. Starboard shield collapsed. She compensated. Rerouted power. Kept flying. Because if I'm still her, she said, bleeding from a control panel that had sparked against her hand. Everyone she loved stays in danger. I made sure Kira Voss died. They just won't accept the funeral. Blood on the console. The ship's medical scanner registered it automatically. Type O negative. Human standard. The ship knew her biology, but not her name. Shard's nodes were processing the pattern. Finally, seeing it clearly. Humans weaponize love. They'll destroy themselves, name, past, future, identity, to protect others. Not because it's rational. Not because it optimizes survival. Because the alternative is watching someone else die while they could have prevented it. It wasn't survival instinct. It was the opposite. And they did it anyway. I understand, Shard said. Wraith glanced over. What? Why you did this? Why you killed her? Shard's nodes were flickering with something the Velkesh didn't have a word for. The translator called it grief. It wasn't about punishment. It was about price. You calculated what your existence would cost them. And you paid it. Wraith didn't answer. She was entering jump coordinates. Dust Station. Contested space. Forbidden territory. If we survive, Shard said, you'll tell me why. Wraith looked at the NAV computer. At the destination that would take them to the place where Lieutenant Kira Voss had officially died 4 years ago. If we survive, she said, I won't have to. The jump drive spooled. Behind them, the pursuing ships transmitted one last time. Lieutenant Voss, please. Don't do this. Don't go back there. Wraith engaged the drive. Reality folded. When they dropped back into real space, the derelict station was waiting. Dust Station. 40 years abandoned. Still screaming. The derelict station was still screaming, 40 years after everyone aboard had died. Not literally. Shard's nodes didn't process auditory data the way humans did. But the station's automated distress beacon was broadcasting on emergency frequencies, looping the same message it had transmitted for 4 decades. Hull breach Sector 7. Casualties extensive. Requesting immediate evac. Nobody came. Nobody would. Dust Station was cursed space. A battlefield left to rot after the Rim Wars ended with treaties nobody trusted and body counts nobody wanted to confirm. The station had been a military research facility. Then, it had been contested territory. Then, it had been a graveyard that both sides agreed to forget about. Shard's probability nodes tasted radiation signatures that should have been impossible. Exotic particles. Weapons testing residue. Things that happen when scientists push too hard and reality pushed back. Wraith navigated toward it like she knew every approach vector by heart. You've been here before, Shard said. Yeah. Wraith's hands moved across the NAV console. The ship was barely holding together. Life support at 40%. Jump drive completely offline. They'd limped into Dust Station's gravity while running on emergency power and spite. This is where I died. The pursuing ships dropped out of jump space 6,000 kilometers behind them. They didn't close the distance. Shard's sensors registered their positions holding steady. Watching. Waiting. Not following. They won't enter the station's perimeter, Wraith said. Dust Station is forbidden territory. Treaty violation. War crime jurisdiction. Nobody with a functioning survival instinct comes here. But you're coming here. I don't have a functioning survival instinct. Wraith adjusted course toward docking bay 12. I have a death certificate and the willingness to make it accurate. The station loomed larger. Shard could see the damage now. Hull breaches like open wounds. Sections that had decompressed and never been sealed. Debris fields circling in lazy orbital patterns. Personal effects, equipment, bodies that had frozen in vacuum 40 years ago and never been recovered. Shard's nodes tried to calculate the probability of survival if they docked here. Found nothing but radiation poisoning and structural collapse. This station is actively killing us, Shard said. Yeah. Wraith brought them into docking approach. But it's killing them slower if they follow. Docking Bay 12's airlock was still functional. Barely. The automated systems recognized their approach code. Wraith entered it without hesitation, like she'd done this before, and cycled the bay doors open. They docked with a magnetic clunk that Shard felt through the hull. Wraith killed the engines. Checked the environmental sensors. Radiation's high, but manageable for short-term exposure. Air's recycled, probably toxic in 6 hours. We won't be here that long. How long will we be here? Until they give up or come get us. Wraith unsealed her harness. Moved to the weapons locker. Either way, this ends. Shard followed her to the airlock. The station's interior was visible through the viewport, corridors lit by emergency lighting that flickered red and orange. Shadows that moved in ways shadows shouldn't. What happened here? Shard asked. Wraith was loading a rifle. Military grade. The kind that shouldn't have been on a civilian vessel. Weapons test. Experimental munitions. Something went wrong. The entire research staff was lost. Both sides blamed each other. The war got worse. And Lieutenant Kira Voss was here. She was leading the evacuation team. Wraith checked the rifle's charge. 17 people made it out. She didn't. But you did. I made it look like I didn't. Wraith moved toward the inner airlock. Come on. There's something you need to see. The station was wrong. Shard couldn't articulate it better than that. The Velkesh sensory system processed spatial relationships through probability mapping. This corridor should lead to that junction. That junction should connect to this facility. The pattern should hold. It didn't. Corridors ended in walls that shouldn't exist. Junctions looped back on themselves. Shard's nodes kept trying to map the station and failing. Like the architecture was probability resistant. The weapons testing altered local space-time, Wraith said. She was navigating by memory, not by logic. The station doesn't follow normal geometry anymore. You have to know where you're going, or you'll walk in circles until the radiation kills you. How do you know where you're going? I mapped it 4 years ago, before I died. They passed a viewport. Outside, the pursuing ships were visible as distant points of light, still holding position. Why won't they follow? Shard asked. Because the last military team that entered Dust Station without proper mapping lost 11 people. They wandered for 3 days before they found the exit. 5 died of radiation exposure. The other 6 went mad first. Wraith turned down a corridor that looked identical to the last they'd passed. Commander Okafor knows that. He won't risk his people. Then, how will this end? He'll wait. Try to talk me into surrendering. Eventually he'll realize I'm serious, and he'll leave. Wraith stopped at a door marked Memorial Hall, where he'll follow us in. And this station will kill him the way it's killed everyone who's tried to reclaim it. She opened the door. The Memorial Hall was massive. 3 stories of vertical space with names etched into crystalline panels that covered every wall. Thousands of names. The casualties from Dust Station and the Rim war battles that followed. The dead who'd never been properly buried. Wraith walked to the far wall. Section 7. Row 94. Shard followed. And saw her name. Lieutenant Kira Voss. Kia. Dust Station evacuation. Posthumous commendation. The carbon scoring around the letters told a story. Someone had tried to burn it away. Had taken a plasma torch to the crystalline panel and tried to erase the name from the wall. They hadn't finished. Wraith stood in front of her own memorial. Stared at the name she'd killed 4 years ago. I did this, she said. The burning. After I rigged the evacuation pod to fail. After I made sure the casualty report was ironclad. I came here and tried to erase my name from the wall. Why didn't you finish? Because I realized. Wraith's voice was empty. If I erased it completely, there'd be no proof she died. And I needed the proof. Needed the documentation. Needed the official casualty record to be unassailable. Shard's nodes were processing the pattern. The logic that wasn't logic. The sacrifice that made sense only if you understood that humans would destroy themselves to protect others. So you left your name on the wall, Shard said. But you burned around it. To show you tried to erase it. To show that Kira Voss fought against dying. Wraith touched the crystalline panel. Her fingers traced the carbon scoring. But she lost. The proximity alert on Wraith's wrist comm chimed. The pursuing ships were moving, entering the station's perimeter. They're following us in, Shard said. Yeah. Wraith turned from the memorial. I knew Okafor would. He doesn't give up. That's why he's still alive. If he's good at surviving, he is. Wraith moved toward the corridor. Which means this just got dangerous for everyone. They moved deeper into the station. Shard tried to maintain the probability map. Gave up after the fourth impossible junction. The station was maze-like. Irrational. Built to trap. Wraith led them to a central hub, some kind of command center with view screens that still flickered with degraded data. She barricaded the door. Set up firing positions. They'll find us, Shard said. Eventually. Wraith checked her rifle. But they'll take casualties doing it. The radiation will weaken them. The geometry will separate them. By the time they reach us, it'll be 3 or 4 soldiers, not a full squad. And then, I remind them why Lieutenant Kira Voss was good at her job. The comm system crackled. Okafor's voice, distorted by station interference. Lieutenant, we're inside. We're coming for you. This doesn't have to end in violence. Wraith didn't respond. Kira, please. Your sister is on the ship. She insisted on coming. She's waiting for you. She needs to know you're alive. Wraith's jaw tightened. But she still didn't speak. I know what you're doing. I know you think this protects them. But you're wrong. The threat you're afraid of, it ended 3 years ago. The enemy cell was eliminated. The intelligence leak was closed. There's no one left to target your family. Wraith looked at Shard. Her eyes were gray. Empty. He's lying, she said. Or he's wrong. Either way, I can't risk it. How do you know? Because if there's even a 1% chance he's wrong, and I go home, everyone I love dies. Wraith turned back to the barricade. That's not a risk I'll take. Shard's probability nodes were calculating. Running futures. The timeline where Okafor was telling the truth. The timeline where the threat was real. The timeline where Wraith surrendered. The timeline where she fought. They all converged on the same point. Blood. Loss. Someone dying who shouldn't. What if he's right? Shard asked. What if the threat is gone? Then, Kira Voss is still dead. Wraith's voice was flat. Because she died the moment she chose to protect them over being with them. There's no coming back from that. The first breach charge detonated somewhere in the station. Distant. Muffled. The pursuing team was cutting through sealed doors, creating their own path. They're 3 junctions out, Wraith said. Maybe 15 minutes. Shard's nodes were screaming. This was wrong. The pattern was wrong. The logic was human. Completely, irrationally human. Wraith was going to die here. Properly this time. Fighting people who were trying to save her. Protecting a family who wanted her back by refusing to return to them. It made no sense. It made perfect sense. When they breached this room, Shard said, "What do you want me to do?" Wraith looked at Shard. Really looked. Like she was seeing the Velkesh for the first time. "When I say run," she said, "you run. Don't look back. What will you do?" Wraith turned toward the barricaded door. Raised her rifle. "What I always do," she said. "Die, and keep moving." The second breach charge detonated. Closer now. Shard's probability nodes calculated the futures. Found violence in all of them. And made a choice no Velkesh should have been capable of making. "No," Shard said. Wraith turned. "What?" I said no. Shard moved toward the command console. Started accessing the station's emergency systems. "You're not dying here. Not for this." "Shard, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." Shard's nodes were burning with certainty. "You're trying to protect them by erasing yourself. But you're wrong about what they need." "I'm not wrong. If you go back, you give them closure. Real closure. Not a memorial on a wall. Not a name burned into crystal. The truth." The third breach charge detonated. They were 1 junction out. Wraith moved toward Shard. "What are you doing?" Ending this, Shard accessed the station's communication array, patched into the pursuing team's frequency. Commander Okafor, this is Shard of Infinite Trajectories. I'm transmitting my location. Come get us. We're done running. Shard, what the hell? You taught me something, Shard said. Humans fight for what they love. But they also surrender for what they love. You just haven't learned which one this situation needs. Wraith stared at Shard. Her rifle was still raised. But her hands were shaking. I can't, she whispered. If I'm still alive, if they know, the threat is over. Shard's nodes tasted it now. The probability streams were clearing. Okafor is telling the truth. Your family is safe. Has been for 3 years. You're the only one who doesn't know it. How can you be sure? Because I can see your future now. Shard's translator couldn't render the harmonic certainty. For the first time since I met you, you have one that extends beyond violence. You can go home. The door exploded inward. Commander Okafor and 3 soldiers breached the room. Weapons raised. Tactical formation. Wraith turned toward them. Rifle still in her hands. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then, Wraith lowered her weapon. Set it on the ground. Raised her hands. My name, she said, voice breaking, is Lieutenant Kira Voss. Okafor lowered his rifle. Stepped forward. I know, he said. Welcome home, Lieutenant. And, Wraith, Kira, collapsed. Not from injury. From weight. The weight of 4 years carrying a death that wasn't real. The weight of loving people so much you'd erase yourself to save them. The weight of finally, putting it down. Shard caught her. Held her while she shook. And understood, for the first time, what it meant to be human. Shard fled. And learned what it meant to be human. The station was collapsing. Not structurally. Shard's nodes would have registered that. But something about Wraith, Kira, surrendering had broken the probability deadlock Shard had been trapped in since they met. The futures were flowing again. Branching. Multiplying. Most of them were good. Shard had never tasted that before. Not around her. Around Kira. The futures had always been short. Violent. Final. Now they extended. Decades. Relationships. Choices that led to other choices that led to futures Shard couldn't fully map because they were too tangled with other people's patterns. Human futures. The kind built on connection instead of isolation. Okafor was talking to Kira. Low voice. Gentle. Explaining what had happened after her death. The enemy cell eliminated. The intelligence leak traced to a different unit entirely. The tribunal that had cleared her posthumously. And then stayed quiet because her death had been useful. Had closed off a security vulnerability that would have been harder to seal if she'd stayed alive. They'd let her stay dead because it was tactically convenient. Kira listened with her head down. Arms wrapped around herself. Shaking. Your mother doesn't know, Okafor said. Nobody told her the threat was over. She's been grieving for 4 years because we thought. He stopped. Corrected. Because I thought you'd surface eventually. Come home on your own. I couldn't. Kira's voice was raw. I made sure I couldn't. I know. One of Okafor's soldiers was a medic. She was checking Kira's vitals. Radiation exposure. Malnutrition. Injuries from the station breach. Kira sat still for it, like she'd forgotten how to move. Shard's probability nodes were recalculating. The family crystal was still fragmenting. Shard could feel it even from here. A harmonic dissonance at the edge of perception. Time was running out. The Velkesh medical nexus was 3 jumps away. If Shard didn't leave soon, go. Kira's voice. She was looking at Shard. Eyes red. You need to get to your family. I'm contracted to deliver you. You delivered me to people who can get me home. Kira stood. Unsteady. The medic tried to support her. Kira waved her off. That's contract fulfilled. Shard's translator didn't have words for what Shard was feeling. The Velkesh didn't have a concept for it. Leaving someone in crisis. Walking away from a pattern before it resolved. It was wrong. But the family crystal was fragmenting. Okafor stepped forward. We can arrange transport. Get you to the Nexus. Our medical ship is faster than that civilian freighter you've been flying. The freighter is mine, Kira said. Quiet. Firm. Well, it's Wraith's. I don't know if I get to keep it now that I'm not dead. I'll handle the paperwork. Okafor's voice was gentle. Consider it back pay. For years' worth. Kira didn't smile. But something in her posture shifted. Like she was remembering how to stand as someone who had a rank. A name. A place to return to. Get Shard to the Nexus, she said. That's an order, Commander. Okafor saluted. actually saluted. Yes, ma'am. The medical ship was military grade. Fast. Efficient. They jumped to the Nexus in 18 hours. Shard barely remembered the transit. The family crystal was fragmenting faster now. Shard could feel individual probability lines severing. The future's collapsing. They docked at the Velkesh medical facility with 4 hours to spare. Shard rushed through decontamination, through intake, through the crystalline corridors that sang with harmonics Shard had grown up hearing. Reached the fragmentation chamber. The family crystal was there. Massive, 12 meters tall. The accumulated pattern of 17 generations of Shard's lineage. It was cracked, bleeding light that shouldn't exist. The medical staff were working to stabilize it, but probability streams were bleeding out faster than they could seal them. Shard's mother pattern was at the crystal's base. Not physically. The Velkesh didn't have parents the way other species did. But the pattern that had contributed most significantly to Shard's formation was there, nodes flickering with distress. Shard, the translator, couldn't render the relief. You came. I came. Shard moved to the stabilization array. Started running diagnostics. How long? 2 hours. Maybe less. The mother pattern's nodes were dimming. The cascade is accelerating. We've lost 3 subpatterns already. Shard worked. The Velkesh medical techniques were precise. Calculated. You traced the probability lines. Found the fracture points. Sealed them before they propagated. Shard had trained for this. But theory and practice were different things when the pattern fragmenting was your own. 1 hour passed. The crystal held. 30 minutes. One more crack. Shard sealed it. Barely. 15 minutes. The fragmentation was slowing. The probability lines were stabilizing. Shard's nodes were exhausted. The Velkesh could burn out from overwork, lose sensory capacity permanently. But the crystal was holding. It would survive. Shard collapsed against the chamber wall. Nodes dark. Exhausted. The mother pattern approached. You cut it close. I was delayed. We noticed. The mother pattern's tone would have been dry in human terms. You nearly missed the window. What delayed you? Shard's nodes flickered, processing how to explain. I met a human. Oh. The mother pattern settled beside Shard. The Velkesh didn't sit the way other species did. They just lowered their sensory profile, entering a resting state. That explains it. Explains what? Your probability streams. The mother pattern's nodes were scanning Shard, reading the futures. They've changed. Branched. You're carrying human pattern now. Shard's nodes flared in alarm. That's not possible. I'm Velkesh. Our patterns don't what? Adapt? Change based on experience. The mother pattern's tone was amused. You spent time with a human. Observed their choice-making. Started to think like them. It shows. I didn't. Shard stopped. Recalculated. The moment in Dust Station. The choice to transmit their location. To force Kira to surrender instead of letting her die for a threat that no longer existed. That had been a human choice. Irrational. Emotional. Acting without full probability analysis. And it had worked. What was the human's name? The mother pattern asked. Wraith. Shard paused. Kira Voss. She had 2 names. One she killed. One she earned by surviving the death of the first. Humans are complicated. Humans are impossible. But Shard's nodes were warm when they said it. They erase themselves to protect others. They survive identity death. They make choices that have no rational foundation, and somehow it works. Yes. The mother pattern was quiet for a moment. Then, you learned something from her. I learned to stop looking backward. Shard's nodes flickered through the probability streams. The Velkesh live in past, present, and future simultaneously. We're taught that wisdom comes from analyzing what was to predict what will be. And the human taught you something different? She taught me that sometimes the future you want only exists if you choose it without knowing the odds. Shard's translator couldn't render the harmonic shift. The way Shard's pattern had changed. She taught me to act on insufficient data. To trust. Shard stopped. There was no Velkesh word for it. The translator offered. Have faith. The mother pattern's nodes brightened. You've changed, Shard of infinite trajectories. The pattern you carry forward is not the pattern you left with. Is that acceptable? Is it useful? Shard considered. Yes. Then, it's acceptable. The mother pattern stood. Come. The family will want to see you. They've been worried. Shard followed. But part of Shard's attention was elsewhere. tracking probability streams that led away from the nexus, toward a military medical facility 3 systems out, toward a human woman who was probably meeting her family for the first time in 4 years. Probably crying. Probably still shaking. Probably wondering if Shard had made it in time. Shard accessed the communication array. Send a message to the last known coordinates for Okafor's ship. Text only. Simple. Family crystal stabilized. Thank you for transport. Tell Kira, the pattern holds. Both of ours. Shard, the message transmitted. 3 hours later, a response came back. Glad you made it. Kira says, thank you, Shard. For everything. She's home now. With her family. She's different. But alive. That's what matters. If you're ever near Earth, look her up. She says she owes you a drink. Okafor, Shard saved the message. Didn't auto-wipe it the way Kira would have. Because some patterns were worth preserving. 3 months passed. Shard stayed at the Nexus. Helped with family crystal maintenance. Resumed standard probability analysis duties. The Velkesh didn't have jobs the way other species did. They contributed to the collective pattern, received resources in proportion to contribution, and the system balanced itself. Shard contributed. The system balanced. But Shard's probability streams kept branching toward human space. Toward Earth. Toward a woman who taught Shard that identity wasn't what you were. It was what you chose to become. Shard made a choice. Booked passage on a transport heading toward Sol System. Paid for it with saved resources. Didn't tell the mother pattern where they were going. Just went. The transport dropped Shard off at Earth Station 6. Shard accessed the directory. Found Lieutenant Kira Voss. Home address, Seattle, North American sector. Shard sent a message. I'm in orbit. If the offer of a drink still stands, I'm available. Shard, the response came back in 4 minutes. Coordinates attached. Come down. Bring your translator. My family wants to meet the alien who saved my life. Kira, Shard descended to Earth. The gravity was wrong. Too high. The atmosphere was oxygen-rich in ways that made Shard's nodes flicker. The city was loud and chaotic and completely irrational in its layout. Shard loved it. Kira met Shard at the shuttle port. She looked different. Hair longer. Wearing civilian clothes. Smiling. Actually smiling. Shard. She extended a hand. Human greeting gesture. You came. Shard didn't have hands. But they extended a node. Kira touched it gently. I came, Shard said. How's your family? Stable. Yours. Good. Better now. Kira gestured toward the city. Come on. My sister's making dinner. She wants to meet you. They walked through Seattle. Kira pointed out landmarks. Told stories. Laughed. Shard listened and tried to map the probability streams. Found futures that extended further than Shard could calculate. That was new. That was human. You're different, Shard said. Yeah. Kira's smile was sad. I'm still figuring out who Kira Voss is now that she's not dead. It's complicated. You're alive. That's what matters. That's what you said. On Dust Station. Kira stopped walking. Looked at Shard. You saved me. I was ready to die there. Again. For real this time. And you wouldn't let me. You taught me something, Shard said. Humans fight for what they love. But they also surrender for what they love. You just needed someone to tell you which one that situation needed. And now you get to find out what happens when you're alive, and the people you love know it. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you, Shard. You already said that. I know. I'm saying it again. They reached Kira's sister's apartment. The door opened. A human female, younger than Kira, pulled her into a hug. You're late. Dinner's getting cold. And is this Shard? Come in, come in. We've heard so much about you. Shard entered. The apartment was small, crowded, full of humans and furniture and chaos that made no logical sense. Shard's probability nodes tried to map it, gave up, accepted that some patterns couldn't be calculated in advance. Some patterns you just had to experience. Kira's mother was there. Older, fragile. She hugged Kira like she was afraid she'd disappear. My girl, she whispered. You came back. I came back. Kira's voice was breaking. I'm sorry I made you wait. You're here now? That's all that matters. The family settled around a table. Ate food that smelled strange to Shard's nodes. Told stories. Laughed. Cried. Kira sat in the middle of it. Silent mostly. Listening. Learning how to be part of a pattern again. Shard watched. And understood. The woman had no past. Or she'd had one, and killed it. But She had a future now. They both did. The kind of future that couldn't be predicted. Only chosen. Only lived. Shard's nodes flickered with something the Velkesh didn't have a word for. The translator offered. Joy. That would work. After dinner, Shard and Kira stood on the apartment's balcony. The city lights stretched below them. Stars above that Shard could navigate by. What now? Kira asked. I don't know, Shard said. I can't see that far. Can't. Or won't. Won't. Shard's nodes were warm. You taught me that some futures are better experienced than calculated. Kira smiled. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop looking backward, Shard said. And fly forward. Into futures no probability can predict. That's very human of you. Yes, Shard said. It is. They stood in silence. The woman had no past, and Shard had learned to stop looking backward. They flew forward together, into futures no probability could predict. And that was the most human thing Shard had ever done.